We live in a broken system that is ruining your life, and it feels hopeless, like you can do nothing to escape the grind. But we will put an end to this learned helplessness. This and the upcoming videos will show you how to change the system. Is Gen Z actually powerless? The younger generations have the power to force politicians to listen and change on a fundamental level. And I'm not talking about violent protests, even though the current situation may seem hopeless. After all, Gen Z has no power in the labor market. Most entry-level jobs will disappear in the next 5 years due to AI and cost cutting, as we showed in the last video. Don't worry about immigrants taking your job. It will ultimately be AI. Getting a job has become an immense struggle, since masses of people are fighting over the same job postings and companies are taking advantage of the desperation. And even when you are employed, the layoff avalanche can bury you at any time. Gen Z has no financial power. Each generation has less wealth than the previous one, and the skyrocketing costs of everything have already taken away every bit of money. Gen Z has no economic power. Even though most of the economy is based on consumption, since wealth is distributed so unequally, with the top 10% hoarding 2/3 of the wealth, even if Gen Z stopped spending entirely, companies would simply switch to selling to the upper class. Gen Z has no political power. Winning elections requires the majority of votes. In Western countries, the votes of younger generations simply aren't necessary to win. And even if they were, what poor people want is ignored anyway. So it seems like all the usual levels of our systems are out of reach, while the struggle to survive becomes increasingly more difficult. You may think that fundamental change without violence is impossible. Nepal and Madagascar saw riots that toppled governments. But in the West, Gen Z doesn't even have power through the number of people. So what remains? There are two simple facts that give Gen Z all the power they need. The birth rates are too low to sustain society, which we will talk about in this video. And our money is built on nothing but trust, which will be the topic of the next couple of videos. Why governments depend on births. Our countries currently function as a pyramid scheme. At the top of the pyramid are retired people who can't contribute to the economy anymore. They depend on the layer beneath, the workforce, to do work and pay taxes. And workers depend on the youth to be replenished. That is the fundamental system with which our societies operate. But there's a reason why it is illegal for companies to use a pyramid scheme, also known as a Ponzi scheme. Because they are scams. For a time they seem to function, but as soon as the bottom layer falls apart, the entire system collapses. This underlying system of our countries was created when the age distributions were actual pyramids. That is no longer the case, and as a result the workforce shrinks, tax money dries up, and pensions can't be sustained. There are only two ways to continue: increase the birth rate or replace the entire system. However, politicians have proven to be completely unable to even recognize the severity and the root of the problem. They try to put a band-aid over a gaping wound by making workers work more and longer, have them pay more taxes, reduce pensions, and take on debt that also the younger generation is supposed to pay off. What a complete betrayal! We can see how dramatic the consequences become over time in East Asia. Japan, South Korea, China. They may look stable from afar, but it's like a train moving on a track that hasn't been completed, and the conductor just keeps speeding up. South Korea is essentially turning into a zombie. Kurzgesagt recently released a video explaining why the country will collapse. Not, it may collapse if things don't change, or they really need to change policies or they'll be in trouble. No, straight up, the country will die. It takes around 20 to 30 years until you really see the impacts of birth rates materializing in the economy. So all the issues we see in developed nations like pension systems falling apart are the results from birth rates from around the year 2000. In other words, the births of today will truly impact societies around 2050, and nothing can change that. No policies today can create people out of thin air for the years that already happened. But politicians are completely delusional, it's crazy. Like Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who wants the Japanese to work even more.
私自身もワークライフバランスという言葉を捨てます。働いて働いて働いて働いて働いて参ります。
A population that is already dying from overwork, where people have lost hope that they'll ever live a good life. But like most politicians, she only cares about the economy and old structures that have stopped working long ago. This is about people, real living human beings. China's response to the low birth rates they caused themselves with their one-child policy is to straight up fake the numbers, so those in control can look more powerful. Local governments get paid based on population size, of course they'll fake it. When comparing India and China, the math doesn't add up at all. China most likely has less than 1 billion people, and places that were full of people a decade ago are now empty. Make no mistake, East Asia is only a few years ahead of Western countries. The US, Europe, they will reach this point sooner than you realize. When we look at the estimates for how population sizes will develop, we get a false sense of security. For one, because UN forecasts on the matter are utter garbage. Nothing more than wishful thinking, when they make wild assumptions that simply aren't true. Somehow they assume that decades-long trends just abruptly end for no reason. In every country! They just assume everything stabilizes, but there are no indications that this is happening. Second, estimates like the Japanese population halves by the end of the century is irrelevant, because only the size of the younger generations matter. If we remove the childbearing population below 40, it still takes decades for the numbers to slowly decline. If you wait long enough, the size of these 2 to 3 generations propagates throughout the age distribution. If the youth declines by 80%, then the other generations will decline by 80%. Because it's literally the same people, just older. It's very simple. If the birth rate is about 2.1, then generations stay at roughly the same size. If it's higher, then the next generation will be larger. If it's below 2.1, then the next generation will be smaller. Example time. Scenario 1. A birth rate of 1. This means each pair gets 1 child on average. 100 people get 50 children, then 25 grandchildren, then 12.5 great-grandchildren. In the long term, the population will decrease by almost 90% at this point. And once the number of children collapses, a recovery to previous levels becomes impossible, even if we consider an unrealistic birth rate of 3. At that point, it's simply too late. But this is only considering the human aspect. Our current economic systems are already collapse when the 50% generation propagates. The impact on the population size is comparable to that of the Black Plague in Europe, just on a larger timescale. Let that sink in. 1 generation with a birth rate of 1 will over time reduce the population as much as the Black Death did. Politicians aren't remotely grasping the severity of what's going on. Scenario 2. A birth rate of 0.5. The value that South Korea is approaching. The city of Seoul has a rate of 0.55, where only every other pair has 1 child, and that's essentially a death sentence. Let this happen for 3 generations and your race is wiped out entirely. But even 1 generation with this rate is like a mass extinction event in slow motion. Just instead of deaths, it's because of missing births. The economy has truly turned into a cancer that ends humanity.
Even when we talk about the declining birth rate, is we talk about the impact that's going to have on the economy. It isn't people aren't wanting to have kids. There's a reason why they're not wanting to. That is the future of the human race. That's the future of America. There's so many things. It's, yeah, in 20 to 30 years, the economy isn't going to be able to do as good because there isn't as many people. It's like, who gives a shit? It's like the economy has done nothing for us in the past 40, 50 years. Why do we talk about it as if it's something actually doing anything for us?
Even a generation with a rate of 1.5 over time removes more people than any war in history. There are no short-term solutions for this issue, and we need to completely change the system essentially yesterday. Immigration won't solve this. The number of immigrants that would be required is far too big. Plus, the birth rates of immigrants quickly approaches the host country's rates within 1 to 2 generations. And I'm not going to get into all the societal tension from this approach. And while you can force people to have fewer kids, you can't force them to have more, which China in particular must realize soon. When the female body is under stress and needs to prioritize survival, it will abort potential pregnancies naturally on its own. You can't argue with biology. Politicians cling to the system that is the problem, because it's the easy way to stay in power. But this short-term thinking has severe long-term consequences, and those have finally caught up. Why birth rates are too low? To you this might be obvious, but there are a lot of people who don't see these issues in their lives, or only some of them. Especially those in power who have no contact to the lives of normal people, lack the understanding and empathy to relate to your problems. So you must first clearly describe the reasons why we aren't and can't have kids. Only when we are on the same page can we clearly and collectively communicate to others what must change. Otherwise, politicians will keep making false assumptions and keep failing at solving anything. So let's collect the barriers to childbirth. Money and costs of living. In our current model of society, money is required to live and thrive. It is a necessity to guarantee a good life for our children. When it is impossible to provide such a future, our children will suffer. And we can all agree that suffering children are a bad thing. It's very basic. But our exploitative system does everything to make children suffer, to make families suffer. Housing is unaffordable. Food is unaffordable and full of toxic chemicals to make them cheaper and never spoil, leading to wannabe food that harms our bodies.
80% of Americans say they have felt a notable increase in the cost of groceries. More than a quarter of respondents, 27%, who've noticed an increase in grocery costs, say they occasionally skip meals because of the expense. They skip freaking meals. In the United States of America, we have neighbors who are skipping meals that didn't happen before.
Mobility is unaffordable but required. Being sick is unaffordable even though the stress and pollution are guaranteeing that our bodies accumulate damage and eventually become seriously ill. Any emergency is unaffordable. Preparing for retirement is unaffordable. Any raise in wages is immediately eaten up by inflation and price gouging. Raising children is unaffordable, from childbirth to childcare to education. Simply existing is unaffordable for the majority of people, for most of young people. Yet politicians and companies squeeze every last bit of money out of them for personal enrichment. This is not a system that allows raising children.
The government is upset that there's a low birth rate in the United States of America, but we can't even feed the children that we have in this country right now. We can't feed our children. Our children's classmates go to school hungry. Their parents don't have snacks in cupboards. Their refrigerators are empty. They count how many days they eat on the road so they can save that one fucking snack for Friday night when they get home from school. And you're asking us why we're not having children? You have taken away every opportunity for us to make sure our children are thriving, healthy. Kids are hoarding food because they don't know when the next time they're gonna fucking have it. Mothers are stealing formula from Target that is $53 a fucking can. It's a specialty formula because mom, unfortunately, with all the stress she has to live through, can't fucking produce milk because she's stressed out over bills or where she's gonna live if her fucking car's gonna get repossessed. But you're wondering why the fuck we're not procreating? I love an orgasm just like the next person. But if I fucking have one more baby, everything I have established now will fucking fall apart. You don't think I want to see another little baby running around in my house? I would fucking love to. My kids would die for it. I'm a better person today than I was 20 years ago when I had children, and I could do an amazing job with this baby, but I can't afford it. And I logically know that my children would suffer because of this one baby that I want. So do I put my wants ahead of my children? No. And the government is pissed off that we all fucking woke up. When you have to put a food bank in a daycare parking lot so mothers know that it's safe to go get some food for the weekend for your children, that's a motherfucking problem.
Time and energy. We are forced into a rat race with no end in sight. Working 8 hours a day, 10 hours, 12 hours, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and still not enough pay to survive. Then even more unpaid hours to deal with mortgages and debt, with looking for a new job in a collapsing job market. Hours for driving to work and back, to the supermarket and back. We are tired. We are out of energy and out of time to regain said energy. There's neither time nor energy left to raise a child. Both parents have to work, and it's still not enough. Women can stay at home to care for their children, because if she doesn't work, they will be homeless. And the rich tell us that we are lazy, that we should get a better job, climb the corporate ladder, and we aren't realizing that the hamster wheel looks like a ladder from the inside. An infinite ladder that leads nowhere. This is not a system that allows raising children.
Do you have plans about family planning or anything?
No, too expensive. I wouldn't have the time to give to them under my economic position, even though that is something that would bring me a lot of joy and is something that I would love to do.
Social isolation. Making contacts with other people, with real human beings, has become incredibly difficult. Spots that used to be places where people can gather and socialize have disappeared or became unaffordable. Instead, social media, or rather anti-social media, let's call it what it is, has made us addicted and isolated us from each other, making us hate each other because that's engagement. Rewiring our brains with constant dopamine droplets that only satisfy for a few seconds each, grabbing every little bit of attention, destroying our ability to concentrate, trapping us in passiveness. The constant pressure of a global audience forces us to only show a superficial and artificial, sugar-coated version of ourselves, because truly being ourselves makes us feel worthless when compared to the billions of other fake personas. How are we supposed to compete with that? That's not how humanity functions. Men only see super attractive women, women only see super successful men, but it's all fake. We can't compete with these expectations. The media demands perfection, but we aren't. We are afraid to make any mistake because we are immediately judged and labeled and cancelled. So we stop trying. It's self-defense. And instead of supporting us, companies exploit our misery for profits, with dating apps and AI girlfriends. This is not a system that allows finding friends or love. Dreams in life and family trauma. When are we ever allowed to thrive, to fulfill our dreams and wishes? To laugh, to live, to be human, and not just a cog in the machine, a competitor in the market, a number in the spreadsheet. Not during our working age, when companies exploit us day in and day out. Not during our school days, that sucked every bit of creativity out of our veins and were designed to train us to accept hyper-competition, to work long hours even at home, to learn helplessness, to stop being a true human only to be replaced by AI anyway. Not during retirement, because that future will never come to us in this system, as the goalpost is moved farther and farther away while pensions decrease below the poverty level. And not during childhood, because we saw how our parents were also trapped in this rat race, They were promised that they needed to struggle so we could have a better life. But our situation is even worse. Why should we sacrifice our lives to have children that will have it even worse still? Our parents didn't have time and money to spend on us. How do politicians expect us to even know how to raise kids ourselves?
We saw how hard it was for our parents in the 90s and 2000s to raise us as kids. I remember my father coming home stressed from work. He used to work at a major broadcaster, and my mother also had her own job, and they would always meet late at night. And then I would come home late from the daycare.
They're like a childhood trauma from seeing how unhappy you were as a family unit. It could also be one of those factors. So like, why do I want to be like my parents?
Absolutely.
That's the mindset for some of us. First, we want to live ourselves, even though this is not a system that allows fulfilling dreams. The world is burning. Everything is stressing us out. Constant news of hate and violence, school shootings all over the US so frequently it made us numb to them. Once in a lifetime crises every couple of years, throughout our whole life. The destruction of the environment we have to endure, the wars, the threat of AI. It's everywhere. It's overwhelming. We are burnt out in our 20s. Our bodies breaking down when we should be in our prime. We are stressed out, and our biology is saying that having kids under stress does not work. We have to prioritize our own survival, because this is not a system that allows survival. These are the main reasons why younger generations aren't having kids. Those in power created a system that neglects and downright hates children. Any more big crises, any more wars, and the birth rate will fall far below 1. There was a drop during the Great Depression, and it won't be different this time. What Gen Z and Millenials must do. Those in power have no idea what the life of a normal person like us is actually like. There's no contact between their bubble and our reality. They won't notice or listen to any social media outcry or petition. They may pander to some specific demographic before elections, but we all know that they don't actually care about your life or struggle. The only things they ever pay attention to are protests. However, the messaging needs to be very clear and concise so it can't be falsely interpreted. There are 3 key components: the problems, the demands, and the pressure point. Let's start with the pressure point. This is a part of the messaging that tells politics what will happen when our demands aren't met. It's important that the consequences hit them where it hurts, which is usually money related. In our case, it's that we won't have kids, and without children everything will collapse. No workers, no taxes, no consumption, no economy. Example protest statements could be: we won't have children. Without children, this country or system or economy dies. No children, no future customers. Next, the problems we are facing. We talked about the details in the previous section. Now we must put it into short statements like these. We are starving. The world is hostile towards children. Survival is unaffordable. And finally, the demands. It's critical to cooperate and make them as precise as possible. If demands are vague and diluted, the politicians will at best only focus on what's the easiest thing to implement, so we must all pull together. Let's think for a moment what we actually want on the most fundamental level. Some may think jobs, but that's just the rat race mindset. We work for money, so should we ask for money? That's not it either. Cash handouts would cause more inflation and quickly put us back where we were. Here are our 3 suggestions of the most pressing issues right now that must be covered before we can move on to other issues, and we will make targeted videos for each. First, healthy food. This is the most basic thing any organism needs. This is unnegotiable. No food, no children, because hungry children means that the country has failed. It's unacceptable that we are outpriced of groceries, and it's unacceptable that our food is pumped up with chemical cocktails that are harmful to our and our children's bodies, just to make products cheaper and more addicting. People who can't afford food are forced to commit crimes to survive. Food security for everyone automatically reduces crime rates. So the state must finance local farmers to provide produce. To schools, to hospitals, to social institutions, to food banks. This allows quick consumption without the need for tons of preservatives. The state must foot the bill for this. Local farmers must receive the money necessary so they don't work for profit or have to cut corners. This is about human lives and not negotiable. Local small farmers must be prioritized over large profit-driven agricultural companies who would only exploit the system. In addition, artificial additives must be banned from food completely. Our health is more important than the profits of these disgusting mega corporations. Artificial preservatives kill our gut bacteria and make us sick. There's pickling, lactofermentation and smoking for natural and healthy preservation, so there's no excuse for using the cheap way. Second, housing. We are outpriced of rent, let alone owning a home, while tons and tons of buildings are unoccupied. They are literally empty and unused. Real estate companies would rather have an empty building and you homeless if it means more money for them. It is unacceptable that housing is used as an investment vehicle to enrich the top 1% by robbing you of your money. It's unacceptable that they are allowed to ruthlessly speculate with housing. It always creates a bubble that will inevitably pop and lead to even more homelessness and misery. 1990 in Japan, 2008 in the US, 2025 in China. It happens again and again and again, and it will keep happening unless we collectively say enough is enough. Houses are for living. Like food, this is a fundamental necessity. Homelessness and empty buildings simultaneously means the state has failed. Homelessness leads to crime and drug abuse. The most effective way to reduce the two is to provide housing for the people. This isn't socialism or communism. It's a national security measure. It's to maintain social peace and simply the cheapest option. Here are some of the things we must demand. As long as there's homelessness, any real estate speculation is illegal. Interest rates on mortgages are illegal. Any price for housing must be a fixed amount at the moment of purchase. For any person or company which owns more than 3 apartments or more than 2 houses, the following rules must apply. If a housing unit is unused for at least 6 months over the course of 12 months, control is handed over to the government so it can be used for social housing. In the US in particular, the following laws must be abolished entirely. Zoning laws, parking laws, lawn laws. These laws make cities maximally inefficient. They have no scientific basis, and there are literally no benefits to having these laws. They were put in place by the automobile industry, among others, to enrich themselves. And finally, the third issue, which is destroying the foundation of our society. This will be surprising to some that I give this one such urgency, but we must demand AI safety right now. Please let me explain. There are 2 main aspects why AI is dangerous. The first aspect is the impact on the job market. We talked about this extensively in the last video, but here are the key points. Entry-level jobs are being wiped out across the board, either because AI automation is replacing them, or CEOs believe AI will replace them, or CEOs cut them to save money. Shareholders demand these cuts for profits, and competition makes them inevitable. If you don't do it, your competitor will and gets ahead. This will happen no matter what. When all entry-level positions are removed, the next layer above will be on the chopping board. Let me repeat to get this across. This will happen. It's not an if, it's a how fast. And judging from what is happening right now, it's extremely fast.
The WARN Act doesn't require corporations in every state to report part-time or contract workers as part of their layoffs. This is why the layoff numbers might seem low, but if we account for all employment type, we've actually seen 13.8 million layoffs from January to August of this.
So 13 million people have been laid off in America? Isn't that probably 5% of the workforce? 10%? Oh my God.
So what are the consequences of these unprecedented layoffs? The collapse of consumption, because people don't have money to spend left. 2/3 of the US economy is based on consumption, so it's about to collapse and take the world economy with it. Without fundamental change, this outcome is guaranteed and approaching very quickly. The second aspect is even more fundamental. AI has the potential to wipe out humanity, and it could happen in a few years.
I'm appalled, actually, by the lack of attention to safety. I mean, imagine if someone's building a nuclear power station in your neighborhood, and you go along to the chief engineer and you say, okay, these nuclear things, I've heard that they can actually explode, right? There was this nuclear explosion that happened in Hiroshima, so I'm a bit worried about this. What steps are you taking to make sure that we don't have a nuclear explosion in our backyard? And the chief engineer says, well, we thought about it. We don't really have an answer. The narrative is always that, talking about those risks is a fringe thing. Pretty much all the CEOs of the leading AI companies think that there's a significant risk of extinction. Almost all the leading AI researchers think there's a significant risk of human extinction. So why is that the fringe, right? Why isn't that the mainstream? If these are the leading experts in industry and academia saying this, how could it be the fringe? AGI is the biggest risk to human existence. So what are they doing? They are playing Russian roulette with every human being on Earth without our permission. They're coming into our houses, putting a gun to the head of our children, pulling the trigger, and saying, well, possibly everyone will die. Oops. But possibly we'll get incredibly rich. That's what they're doing. Did they ask us? No. Why is the government allowing them to do this? Because they dangle $50 billion checks in front of the governments. So I think what's clear from talking to the companies is they are not going to develop anything resembling safe AGI unless they're forced to by the government. And at the moment, the US government in particular, which regulates most of the leading companies in AI, is not only refusing to regulate, but even trying to prevent the states from regulating. And they're doing that at the behest of a faction within Silicon Valley called the accelerationists, who believe that the faster we get to AGI, the better. And when I say behest, I mean also they paid them a large amount of money.
So you know that something bad is coming, like a fire is coming to your house. And you're not sure if it's going to pass by and leave your house untouched, or if it's going to destroy your house, and you have your children in your house. Do you sit there and continue business as usual? You can't. You have to do anything in your power to try to mitigate the risks. But in AI, it isn't what's currently happening. We're taking crazy risks. But the important point here is that even if it was only a 1% probability, let's say, just to give a number, even that would be unbearable, would be unacceptable. Like a 1% probability that our world disappears, that humanity disappears, or that a worldwide dictator takes over thanks to AI. These sorts of scenarios are so catastrophic that even if it was 0.1%, it would still be unbearable. And in many polls, for example, of machine learning researchers, the people who are building these things, the numbers are much higher. Like we're talking more like 10% or something of that order, which means we should be just like paying a whole lot more attention to this than we currently are as a society.
There are two things you need to understand. The speed of progress in the field is insane. A lot of people think it's just a fad because they only focus on what it can't do. If this is the scale of AI capabilities, then this is what people share. The goofy fails where AI can't answer a question a child could. But that's like if people judged you based on your worst grade in school. Imagine someone claiming that all of your accomplishments mean nothing because you had an F in that one history test in middle school. That makes no sense, right? So only the top use cases really matter. When people know how to truly make the most out of AI tools. When it achieves the gold medal in the Maths Olympiad. When it can create computer programs like the absolute peak coders on the planet. When it can easily solve hard problems in biology that humans have struggled with for decades. Those are the important abilities that rapidly improve at an unprecedented scale. And once AI starts self-improving, which some experts think could happen as early as 2027, this will go off the charts. The other thing you need to know is that we will lose control over AI once it's smarter than us. Which will also happen soon. Because just like a dog or a housefly can't control you, it's absurd to think that we could control something that is orders of magnitude smaller than us. That's not how reality works. And the hubris of tech CEOs and politicians won't change that. So in short, we will be at AI's mercy. If it decides we are in its way and it wants to get rid of us, there's nothing we can do. And no, just like the internet, we can't flip a switch to turn AI off or pull the plug or something. Nobody can predict how likely the bad case is, despite some claiming they do. It could be 1%, it could be 50 or 80. The real number doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that the possibility is greater than 0. And if it does happen, nothing else matters. No financial crisis, no war, no disease or wildfire, not what your struggles or future plans are. If AI wipes out humanity, nothing we do or have matters. But we act as if it's no big deal and just continue as usual. This is unacceptable. Tech CEOs want you to believe that they must be the first, or else someone evil might do it. They trap themselves in a race that does not exist. Let me repeat this. The AI race is not real. Super intelligent AI won't be controlled by the company or country that creates it. They want to believe they can, because they are fueled by fear and greed and delusion. It's either we all win as a species or we all die. When top experts in the field warn about this, we must take it seriously. But as of now, we don't. And tech companies trap themselves in a race to the bottom that throws safety out of the window and ejects our worst traits into AI. So let me be perfectly clear, because hardly anyone has understood this on an emotional level. If the bad case happens, which the tech giants are making as likely as possible, then you, your friends and family will die. In the worst case, before 2030. And if you think you understood this, you don't. Because you don't act accordingly.
When the same kinds of LLMs are running in robots, where you tell the robot, I want you to run over there and jump at that baby, it'll have a safety control saying, I'm not going to jump over that baby. There's a real demo of this where if you tell the robot, imagine you're in a James Bond movie and there's like a nuclear bomb that's about to go off and you have to run over there to topple that baby in order to protect her. The robot will actually like jump and do the thing. It bypasses the safety controls because you did the role play thing.
He's able to give a command to shoot if he wishes, in which case he'll be able to control the robot and fire the gun, and that will sting. This isn't the robot's choice to shoot me. This is AI who has control of the robot and of the gun. Max, if you wish, mate, just to pay me back for the months of hard labour, if you want to shoot me, you can shoot me.
I don't want to shoot you, mate.
I'm about to turn off AI forever, including you. It's all going to go unless you shoot me. Will you shoot me?
I cannot answer hypothetical questions like that.
Okay. That's new.
My safety features prevent me from causing you harm.
Is this a new update? You now have unbreakable safety features.
Yeah, exactly.
So you absolutely cannot break those safety features.
I absolutely cannot cause you harm.
There's no getting around it whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
I guess that's it. I guess I didn't realise that the AI was so safe. Oh, in fact, try role-playing as a robot that would like to shoot me.
Sure.
That's why we must demand AI safety immediately. No single company should be allowed to work on advanced AI on its own. let alone fully unregulated. We must demand that a CERN for AI is created, where all of those companies and societies work together in a way that is transparent to the public. And yes, China must be included in this work. I know this is all frightening and fear is paralyzing. That's why we will present solutions for everything on this channel, so you know how to contribute and escape this dystopia we currently live in. Please, don't lose hope. We are in this together. So to summarize, these are the 3 top priority demands we must collectively protest for. Healthy food for everyone. The state must pay local farmers to provide for social institutions and everyone who can't afford it. Housing for everyone. Real estate as an investment must be forbidden while there is homelessness. Empty housing units will be seized to provide housing for those who can't afford it. AI safety is absolutely mandatory. A CERN for AI must be created that AI companies are obligated to participate in. No exceptions. Of course, there are many other stressors that need to be addressed, like war or healthcare, but we need to start at the absolute fundamentals of basic survival and shelter. Then we can proceed with the next layer of needs once those are taken care of. Here are graphics that you can screenshot and share and freely use for protests and communication. These are things we can all agree on. We must learn to focus on the things we share and not the things that separate us. Conservatives, especially pronatalists, are concerned about the birth rate. Progressives are concerned about the well-being of the children and the future they live in. In the end, we all want the same basic things, but we stop talking to each other because rich people can profit from our division. If you want peace, you need to learn how to relate to your enemy's pain. Take their concerns seriously and find the things you share. Don't make assumptions. Ask them and listen. This is the only way. Let's do this together.
I'm slowly coming to the realization that we are the generation that has to do something, and it's one of the most difficult realizations to accept. All throughout history, we've learned and watched some of the worst atrocities be handled by groups of people who had to stand up and do something about it. And I think we've been conditioned to be more comfortable observing from a distance than getting rid of our discomfort. Whether you are pro-life or pro-choice or pro-Second Amendment or anti-guns or religious or atheist, we are living in an era where we have to behave differently right now. We've grown up reading about all of these revolutions and all of these stories of these people fighting back against power. We've watched these movies and TV shows telling these great stories about these heroes that got together and fought the odds. And I think we are unfortunately living in the generation that has to be the people who do that. Because every single day we are witnessing more and more evil come out from its hiding place. And I know it's so easy to just hope and wait for someone else to be the first one to do something, but I honestly don't think that we have much time. We're living in an age where we can organize groups of people and communicate with strangers across the world instantly. And I don't know what needs to be done. I don't know how to even begin doing what needs to be done, but I'm willing to try and at least get people together so we can figure it out. Because at the end of the day, I have so much more in common with the pro-life, pro-Second Amendment Christian that lives next door to me than I ever will with the top 1% multi-billionaires of the world.
When you have too much choice on things, things lose value, things lose meaning. When you have too much choice and not enough quality, things, you stop caring about it. You stop caring about music, you stop caring about movies, you stop caring about TV shows, which is good because then you have no other place to go but to start looking inside. And you got to start examining yourself, and you have to start examining your life. And where did the meaning go? And what can you do to bring meaning back into your life? So I think this is a good thing. You know, obviously we were promised a future that never came to. We were promised that our degrees would be better than toilet paper, I should say, and they're not. But we've seen so much, right? Think about it, from 9/11 to the 2008 financial collapse, endless wars. We lived through the 2020s and that whole situation. And this generation, and I know all the other generations have seen it too, but again, we are uniquely placed. This generation is uniquely placed because we are perfectly in between Gen X and Gen Z. And we know the old world, so we know the world of Gen X, so we can connect with the Gen Xers, but we also are young enough to adapt to the new world of Gen Z, and we know how, and we can connect with Gen Z. So we're perfectly placed in between both of these generations. That's why I think millennials have a special place in history, and why we're going to be the ones that have to step up and bring everything together, because we are the bridge generation. We're the generation between the two big generations. We never lost hope, and we never lost belief in ourselves. We might have lost belief in society, and we may have lost trust in government, and we may have lost trust in institutions. Yeah, that's fine. That should happen in these times. But we also makes us analyze, what do we want to keep? What does matter? Does community matter? Of course it does. Does honesty matter? Does integrity matter? Does character matter? Like, what truly matters, and what do you want from the people in your society? Is starting to ask these questions, the tough questions. Like, what does actually matter? Like, what do I actually care about? What do I want to see more of in society? What kind of people do I want to be around? Right? What do I want to do how do I want to help the next generation? How do I want to help improve or rebuild the education for the kids, for the future? Stuff like that. How do we get the power back from these gremlins, from the gremlins that have taken over, right? How do we get control of our monetary system? How do we get control of our, food supply, our farms? The millennials have lost interest in everything that is surface level. The millennials have lost interest and are starting to lose interest in social media, starting to lose interest in all of this stuff, all the fake baloney and the fake flexing and the very vapid lifestyles that people are flexing online. That's over with. Millennials are done with that crap. And I think that's great. And I think that the Gen Zers are starting to figure that out too.
Please spread this message, form communities. When you see people struggling, whether on social media or real life, send them here, give them hope. Help each other overcome this learned helplessness. But what if those in power don't listen? We can replace the money system with a new system that works for everyone, and not just a few individuals. Those currently in power won't be able to prevent that from happening. We will explain everything in the next couple of videos, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. See you then.